All right, welcome to today's video. I'm super excited about today's topic. Actually, I'm usually excited about all the topics I talk about, or else I wouldn't talk about them, but I digress. Now, today's video is going to be sponsored by no one because I don't have a sponsor. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into today's video. A couple summers back in 2022, my brother and I had talked about taking a trip, like doing something difficult, something challenging, whether that was whitewater rafting, which neither of us have done, but something that was going to push us physically and mentally. And the ironic thing is we kind of had come about it separately, like we hadn't been talking about it. And then one day he kind of reached out to me and I had already been thinking about it. So it kind of felt like destiny, like something that needed to happen. And as we were tossing ideas back and forth, we wanted to include my then 13-year-old son and kind of bring him on this trip. It's kind of like a rite of passage as he's 13, getting older, starting to be able to make decisions more for himself, but to be able to really, do something intense with him, so where he's having to challenge himself. And so what we settled on is a trip to the Alaska backcountry, where we also did some scrambling, some bushwhacking, we stayed a night on a glacier and did some ice climbing. It was very intense, like very transformative. And it's something that we all still talk about to this day. And I find that I still learn lessons from it. So I wanted to talk about some of that today. Now, one of the main takeaways I see is that, here it was, we're all hiking the same hike, so to speak, and literally, but really we were all individually tackling our own things. Like my hike was much different than my brother's or my son's, even though we were sometimes on the same path, or if we were creating our own path with the help of our guides. Now, when I say the Alaska backcountry, we weren't on trails. It was completely off the grid. We had to carry in all of our own food. Everything kind of uncharted. And especially for us. Now, our guides did have some of the route planned out, but as we learned on the next to last night, if at any point in time they feel that the people who are doing this challenge aren't up for it, maybe they re-hike back the way you came as opposed to pushing on. And so it was kind of cool, like in hindsight, to think about that we were all going through our own issues. It brought up things on the hike that maybe they shared some similarities, but they were also different. And I think it's a great metaphor for life and a lesson to bring back that even though, let's say you're trying to lose fat, and it doesn't matter how much you have to lose, but there's shared experience, and whether that's working with the coach or you're going about the journey alone, that other people have done it, but other people haven't done it in the context of your life. So much like we were hiking this mountain, we had the same starting point, the same end point. There were various times where up the mountain we were taking different routes because of whether it was an ability thing or somebody just felt more comfortable going a certain way versus going a different way. And there isn't a right or wrong in that. And some of the other things that came up for me is really stepping I was way outside of my comfort zone. And I was being like pushed mentally almost more than physically. And I was being pushed physically, don't get me wrong. But I remember distinctly it was day 3 and we had kind of reached base camp, and you see the mountain like not too far off in the distance, like a very short walk, 5-10 minutes. And we're all kind of looking around and setting up. We had a pretty strenuous hike, a lot of elevation. I don't know if it was 5 or 6 miles. We're tired, hungry, but we're excited. It was like beautiful scenery. We hadn't seen another soul aside from one another in days. No cell phone service. And at that point in time, you're calm, you're relaxed, you're excited, you're tired, you're anxious, all of that. I see my brother kind of standing off in the distance looking at this mountain, and I go over there and join him, and I felt real fear because that was our only way out. Like, we either had to be flown out, which is going to be very, very expensive, like ridiculously expensive, or we're going to have to hike out. We had to scramble up that mountain with no attachments, no rope attachments, just taking it very, very slowly, making your way up this mountain. And I was scared. I remember having to calm myself down, like do breathing exercises, because I was nervous. I had my 13-year-old son here. And as I'll introduce, our guides, I'll, put the company in the description, because this is just an amazing company, amazing guys, and not just people who like do this every once in a while, but they live the life. And so you do have that support. But the owner of the company had kind of given us some like a step-by-step, like, hey, based on a system he had heard from another explorer, and that the explorer had explained to his kids, like level 1, meaning you may trip and fall, scratch your arm, nothing's really going to happen, you're not really in any danger. Level 2 is like a little bit more challenging, like could sprain an ankle, possibly. It would be uncomfortable, but again, nothing life-threatening. And level 3 being like, hey, we all have to be dialed in, focused, we're listening, we're paying attention to our footing, because if something happens, it means serious injury and potential death. And he's like, hey guys, this is level 3. So prior to hiking up this mountain, it's tense. It's a little bit tense. Checking our shoes, making sure everything's tied, checking packs, making everything is tied down, can't get something snagged. Like, we're all locked in, listening to the guides, developing a game plan as we go up this mountain. And here it is, like I'm scared myself, and I got my 13-year-old son with me. And as a parent, I think not just up this mountain, but in life, you want to quote unquote carry the pack, whether you have 1 kid or 3 kids or however many kids you have. Like, you hate to see them struggle, but it wasn't possible. Like, he had to hike his own hike. And as I'll get into, I'll talk about that, it really, I think, prepared me for flash forward to today, and my son, who's going through some skin issues that have caused a big shift in our day-to-day. And I will explain those things, but to jump back, so you're sitting. It's a mountain that you've literally got to climb. Like we're not getting. That's the end of part one of the video. In the second half, I just share more about our trip, about me, my experiences, what I learned, what my son is having to deal with now. Of course, I will talk about that. But I hope you enjoyed the first half. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, and I will see you in part two.